Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories.
Rifton kissed her tear-stained eyelids, tracing her soft skin with his fingers as he whispered, "You're real, aren't you?" His expression grew serious as he continued, "I don't know where you heard those ridiculous rumors, but I turned down that proposal a long time ago. I can't believe they would suggest that to a married man. I even asked the king if he'd lost his mind." An aura of resolve surrounded him. "Marriage is a sacred vow. If any fool dares to violate it, I'll deal with him myself." Maxie flinched at his words, still anxious. But she's a princess. And so beautiful. Her insecurities surfaced again. Unlike her, the princess was someone respected and admired by everyone. Rifton looked at her, surprised. "Have you met Princess Anise?" Maxie's heart ached at the way he said the name, as if they were close. He sighed. "I don't care for strong-willed women who are like wild horses with fiery tails. And I don't like being cooped up in a palace or having to flatter that princess." But she stammered. He cut her off. "Unless, of course, you're using these rumors as an excuse to divorce me." Maxie quickly shook her head. Seeing this, he pressed his forehead to hers and sighed in relief. "Good. Let people say whatever they want. We're still married, and I won't stand for you bringing this up again." Suddenly, Rifton pulled back to look at her, his gaze tender. Wait. Hold on." Maxie stammered, but the blankets were quickly tossed aside. Embarrassed, she tried to cover herself. Hey, wait," she protested, looking up at him. Wide-eyed, Rifton locked his gaze on her, saying softly, "It's Rifton. Don't you know your husband's name?" Maxie's face flushed as he leaned in and captured her lips in a deep kiss. She closed her eyes, thinking, Are we doing our marital duty again? But it was so painful last time." Just then, Rifton paused, pulling back to study her expression. "You don't want to?" he asked. "We're married. But if you don't want to, I won't force you." Maxie was at a loss for words. But when she looked at him, with his earnest gaze like a hopeful puppy waiting to be loved, she felt completely flustered and unsure of what to do. He had even refused a marriage to the princess. "I should accept the responsibilities of being his wife," Rifton whispered gently. "I'll be as gentle as I can." Suddenly, Maxie pushed him away, exclaiming, Wait. Hold on." Rifton grasped her arm, pressing fervent kisses to it. "Call me Rifton," he murmured, his voice deep with emotion. "Our Rifton," Maxie stammered, her eyes welling up with tears. Hearing her call his name, he could no longer hold back. Their hearts intertwined, merging together in a fervent embrace. "You're beautiful, Maxie," he breathed. The next morning, Maxie looked at the man in front of her, her mind lingering on the night they'd shared. "Was everything I believed about our first night a lie?" It wasn't painful at all. It was heated, filled with passion. Her face flushed as she remembered the night's intensity. Reaching out, she gently touched his hair. He had seemed so weary yesterday, but now he slept peacefully, like a carefree child. She thought, "He said he suffered when he left me 3 years ago, that he only thought of me while he was in that hellish place. And when he held me last night, it was as if I melted into his arms." Could he really have meant it? Did he truly feel that way about me, even when we were forced into this marriage? Just then, Rifton's eyes fluttered open, surprising her. Maxie quickly turned away, hiding her embarrassment. "Our Rifton, it's morning." In one swift motion, he pulled her close, wrapping her in his arms. "Yes, morning already," he murmured, nuzzling against her. "I've been waiting for you to wake up. It almost killed me." Blushing, Maxie realized he hadn't slept at all. He kissed her soft skin and asked tenderly, "Are you in any pain?" She stammered, "And no, not at all." "And how did you feel last night?" he asked, his gaze warm. Maxie's face turned bright red. She was about to answer when he kissed her, tangling his fingers in her hair. "For me, it was heaven," he said, his voice filled with happiness. "I can't stop myself when I'm with you. Even if you told me to, I wouldn't be able to hold back." Maxie was utterly embarrassed. "Our Rifton," she stammered, but he simply took her hand, holding it tightly as he mumbled, "You're really unlucky to have married a brute like me." Surprised, she asked, what did you just say? But before he could respond, a loud knock sounded on the door. Commander, how much longer are you planning to, carry on in there? Rifton's expression darkened with irritation as the persistent voice outside continued, you can rest once you're back at the estate, so please, hurry up. The sun is already high in the sky. Wrapping a cloth around himself hastily, Rifton yelled, didn't I tell you that if you disturbed me again, I'd rip your guts out? Is that what you want? The voice answered, but, you must get to the capital as soon as you return to the estate. Rifton snapped, I already said we're delaying the schedule by a day. Are you going to die if we don't leave right now? Just send the carriage ahead. Remembering his words, Maxie wondered, was it truly just a marital duty, or, what am I even thinking? I should be grateful he brought me along, and he's already delayed everything because of me. I need to hurry up so no one else has to wait. Just then, there was a knock on the door and a maid respectfully announced that she'd brought the attire Rifton had requested for her. Moments later, Maxie was dressed in a stunning crimson gown more beautiful than anything Rosetta had ever worn. But as she tried to reach the laces at the back, she froze, flustered. I didn't realize dressing myself would be this difficult. She recalled how the maid had proudly mentioned that her husband had even bought her undergarments to go with the dress, causing Maxie to blush deeply. She had immediately insisted on dressing herself without help. Suddenly, Rifton entered the room. Maxie, are you ready yet? From his vantage point, he could see how beautiful she looked in the red dress. Sorry, I made everyone late, but my dress, she said, fumbling. Rifton quickly looked away, trying to hide his flustered expression. Don't apologize. I had no idea you'd struggle so much getting dressed. Rifton approached her, offering gently, let me help you with that. Maxie, flustered, replied, thank you. Rifton murmured, I bought it in a hurry. You probably don't even like it. When we get back to my estate, I'll make sure you have dresses that suit you better. Maxie's heart fluttered. How could I dislike it? Compared to the dresses I had back at the Croy estate, this one feels so luxurious. She remembered how, in her youth, her dresses were always cut from leftover fabric after Rosetta's gowns were made, and how the maids grumbled at her for growing too quickly, thinking she was a nuisance. I'm not a true noblewoman, not like he imagines. If Rifton finds out, he'll probably be disappointed. Seeing Rifton's genuine care and desire to give her the finest things, Maxie decided she'd keep her past to herself. Finally, the two made their way to the gathering spot. The soldiers around them muttered and exchanged glances. One of them commented, I thought they'd only show up after sunset. Sure are enjoying themselves, huh? The sun's already at its peak. Rifton, irritated, barked, shut your mouth. The blonde knight from the previous day added sarcastically, what's the big deal? She's just the Duke's daughter after all. Rifton's anger flared. I told you to keep quiet. As the carriage set off, Rifton leaned close to Maxie and reassured her, don't pay attention to those rough men. They may have a grudge against your father, but you're no longer part of the Croy family. You're Lady Calypso now my wife. I'll make sure they learn to be more respectful. Maxie understood why the soldiers resented her. Her father had forced them into battle, and she couldn't help feeling guilty. Seeing her sadness, Rifton scowled, his expression fierce and intimidating, like a panther baring its teeth. Those idiots. I'll deal with them one by one if I have to. Maxie's heart swelled, touched by his protectiveness. He's even angrier than I am. He really is a strange man, but I don't feel afraid of him anymore. What is this feeling stirring inside me? Noticing her gaze, Rifton said, you know, this is the first time I've seen you smile. Maxie blinked in surprise. Huh? Rifton, slightly embarrassed, cleared his throat and barked loudly to the soldiers. What's taking you all so long? Get moving already. Maxie thought to herself that just having him by her side was enough, but now, she found herself longing to stay with him even more. The noise around her was loud, but Rifton stepped out to investigate, finding the blonde soldier arguing with another man. Rifton calmly interjected, lower your voice. We're still on the Croy estate, don't give that old man a reason to cause trouble. The blonde knight glanced over with a grumble. Do we really have to be that careful? Maxie saw the look of resentment in his eyes, which made her flinch, but the knight eventually turned away, lowering his voice. Fine, but don't blame me when your coin purse starts running dry. Maxie looked down, thinking, if I were Rosetta, the guards would have let us leave my father's estate without any hassle. Rifton, noticing her discomfort, asked, what about a place to stay for the night? The soldier replied, with the harvest season underway, everywhere's crowded with supplies and merchants. I barely managed to secure a place for us to rest. Rifton frowned. Can't you arrange a private spot for my wife? I'll make sure you're well rewarded. But just then, Maxie placed a gentle hand on his arm. I don't want to stay alone. Rifton stood there, stunned for a moment, as did the rest of his men, all blushing and fumbling awkwardly. I'm starving. Let's head over there for a quick rest. Pardon, but where's the clean water around here? One of them mumbled, shuffling away. Rifton, equally flustered, cleared his throat. Well then, let's go. That night, they gathered at a cramped storage barn. Rifton called her over. Maxie, come sit with me. She looked at her husband, who was tending the fire, and glanced around, wondering, what if there are mice or bugs here? Rifton, noticing her hesitation, reassured her. Don't worry. It might be a bit dusty, but there aren't any mice here. With Rifton nearby, Maxie felt a sense of warmth and security she hadn't experienced before. Maxie looked down, mumbling, and no, it's not that. She chastised herself, worrying, what if he thinks I'm picky or difficult? A moment later, a steaming bowl of potatoes was set in front of her. Eat up, but be careful, it's hot, Rifton said. Maxie picked up a potato and took a bite, her eyes widening at the delicious flavor. Rifton watched her with a small smile, clearly pleased by her reaction. He handed her another potato, saying, have another. Blushing, she replied, and no, you should eat too, Rifton. In a low voice, he insisted, just take it, Maxie stammered. Thank you. For the first time, someone was sitting beside her, giving her food like this. The potatoes tasted better than anything she'd ever eaten at the Croy estate. When night fell, the group lay close together to sleep, but Maxie couldn't relax with Rifton beside her. In a hushed tone, she called out, Rifton. He whispered back, Everyone's around us, she murmured, embarrassed. Rifton didn't seem to care, moving even closer to her. No one will notice. Just stay close, it's cold. And no, I'm fine, really, please move a bit farther away, she stammered. In response, he pressed a kiss to her neck. Nearby, the soldiers were clearly uncomfortable, sweating and unable to sleep. Sir, don't you see we're all a bit embarrassed? Could you keep it down a little? Rifton shot back gruffly, mind your own business and shove off. Ruth, the blonde soldier, responded, I'm not here to interfere with you, so please, let's keep things calm. Rifton growled, hurry up and scram, and handed her a glowing object. Here, take this, it's a magic stone that will keep you warm. Maxie's eyes widened. That's for me? Ruth, noticing Rifton's jealous glare, answered, of course it's for you. These guys here could probably sleep outside in the snow with nothing but their underwear, but my lady needs something better. I heard you don't have the best health, so if you catch a cold, I'll be the one suffering for it, you know. Just a precaution. Maxie beamed at him. Thank you, Ruth. Flustered, Ruth scratched his head and muttered, I'm no knight, just a mage. Just call me Ruth, my lady. Rifton, seeing them growing familiar, scowled and quickly shooed Ruth away. That night, the room grew quiet, filled only with their even breathing. Maxie held the warm magic stone, thinking, I didn't think I'd be able to sleep tonight. But this warmth, this is what it feels like to share warmth with someone else. Her drowsiness overtook her, and she drifted off to sleep. Over the next several days, Maxie grew used to camping outdoors, but Rifton began to avoid her, keeping his distance. The carriage is small, and you have a lot of luggage, so sleep on your own, he'd say. When others set up camp or when she offered to share food with him, he'd find an excuse to keep his distance, often taking the night watch and sleeping on the cold ground. Feeling lonely, Maxie wondered, does he find me bothersome? When Rifton noticed her sighing, he called for a halt and ordered the group to set up camp. At this slow pace, the men were sure they'd need a few extra days to leave the forest. As she climbed out of the carriage, Maxie's legs gave out from sitting too long and she stumbled. Rifton immediately caught her, lifting her in front of everyone and carrying her to a nearby rock. He gently inspected her legs. "Are you hurt?" he asked, concerned. "And no, I'm fine. You don't have to," she began, but Rifton cut her off. "That's your habit, isn't it?" he said. What do you mean?" she replied, confused. While he massaged her ankles, he added, "The only thing you ever say is that you're fine." Blushing, she insisted, I really am fine. I'm sorry for being a burden." Rifton froze, looking at her in confusion. "Why would I ever see you as a burden?" he asked. Maxie replied, disheartened, You keep telling me to sleep alone. I thought maybe I was bothering you." Rifton sighed deeply, lowering his head. "You are too much." Without another word, he suddenly stood, pulling her along with him. Wait, where are we going?" she stammered. He led her straight ahead, stopping only when they reached a large tree. He gently pressed her back against it, standing closer to her than ever before. Rifton sighed, "I'll be the death of myself because of you." Suddenly, he pulled her into his arms, pressing his body against hers. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to be near you?" Maxie realized what he was implying, her face turning as red as a strawberry. "So, if you don't want to make it harder on me," Rifton trailed off, cheeks flushed. "I don't avoid sleeping next to you because you're a bother. It's just me." And with that, he left the room, reminding her to hold on tight because the road ahead would be bumpy. Outside, a bearded soldier chuckled as Rifton walked past. "Done already, Chief? That was quick." Rifton scowled, snapping, "Shut your mouth and get ready to move." As they set out, Maxie felt relieved. Rifton didn't find her bothersome at all. Soon after, Rifton asked her to ride with him, as they needed to take a shortcut. Maxie hesitated, stammering her agreement. He gently instructed her, "The path ahead is rough. If you get tired, lean on me." Maxie's heart raced as she mounted his horse, telling herself to hold on carefully so she wouldn't fall. Along the way, she overheard that Rifton would need to visit the royal palace as soon as they returned to Anatol. The bearded soldier from before mumbled, glancing off to the side, "Ugh, another detour. We're already running late. It wouldn't be good to keep King Reuben waiting." Hearing this, Maxie lowered her head, feeling guilty. "Oh no, they're behind schedule because of me." But Rifton replied calmly, "We can't control the weather. It's not a big deal." The blonde soldier spoke up, "Chief, are you really going to ignore the king's summons just because of some rain?" Rifton glared at him, grumbling, "Shut your mouth. We'll only be a little late. It's fine." "But we've wasted enough time on trivial things," the soldier insisted. Rifton growled, "Watch your mouth, Uzel." Suddenly, a scout called out, "Commander, there are 5 werewolves ahead." Maxie gasped, "Werewolves?" Before she could gather her thoughts, the soldiers were already charging into battle. Rifton dismounted, turning to her with a gentle warning, "I'll be back soon. Keep your eyes closed, okay?" "Commander, above you," shouted one of the soldiers. Rifton's sword flashed through the air with a powerful strike, and a loud thud followed. Maxie opened her eyes to find a werewolf lying lifelessly in front of her, sliced clean in half with a single blow. The archer marveled, "Wow, those black werewolves can go invisible. There could be more around, so we need to hurry." Rifton turned to Maxie, saying, "Hold on tight, we're picking up the pace from here." With that, the group sped forward as the sun began to set. Rifton called for a brief halt as they neared their destination, pointing into the distance. "Maxie, look there." Her eyes sparkled as she gazed at the towering castle on a high mountain, surrounded by a sprawling village and farmlands below. "That's Anatol, my territory. Most of the residents here are mercenaries, miners, and farmers. The land isn't very fertile, so the people mainly rely on raising livestock like sheep and goats. It may not look grand from the outside, but it's spacious within." Maxie replied, "It doesn't look desolate at all. It's like a magnificent fortress." Rifton suddenly apologized, It's not as splendid as the Croy estate, and there are monsters outside the walls. But don't worry, the walls are high, and no creature can get through. Maxie shyly reassured him. I'm not worried. Ruth, the mage, chimed in. If you knew how much we spent on those walls, you'd feel safer, my lady. But we've been away from the castle for a while, so who knows? Rifton scowled. Ruth, if you don't shut your mouth, I'll tear down your precious wizard tower. The bearded soldier grumbled. Chief, can we please get moving? I'm starving, and everyone's thirsty too. Rifton replied. All right, let's go. The troop made its way through the gates of Anatol, beneath a billowing green flag emblazoned with a dragon. We are the Dragon Knights. Open the gates. Rifton called, and as the gates lifted, they were greeted with the cheers of the townspeople. Ross W. Grew. Ross W. Grew. Hail to Calypse, the valiant knight who defeated the Red Dragon. Our protector and lord, long live our guardian, Calypse. Maxie could see how joyfully the people welcomed their lord home. The warm and happy scene was a stark contrast to the cold atmosphere of the Croy estate, where servants only obeyed her father in fear. But what were these girls dressed so provocatively doing here? As Maxie stood, stunned by the cultural shift, the bearded soldier was practically glowing with excitement. The people of Anatol had already begun celebrating, having heard of their lord's victory. Rifton pulled Maxie close, whispering, I need to head back to the estate, but you all go ahead and enjoy the festivities. The men's faces lit up with smiles as they prepared to celebrate. Rifton glanced at Maxie. Hold on tight, he instructed, and with her red hair flowing in the wind, they rode through the gates toward a grand estate in the distance. Up close, Maxie was in awe. This place was even more majestic than it had looked from afar. As they stopped, Rifton carefully helped her down from the horse. My lord, you're back. An elderly steward greeted him, bowing along with the other servants. We prepared the rooms and cleaned the training grounds as soon as we heard the news. Good, Rifton replied. The knights are celebrating tonight, so they'll likely stay at the tavern. The old steward hesitated, eyeing Maxie. And this young lady is? Rifton wrapped an arm around her. She's my wife. I just brought her home. Maxie stammered. I'm pleased to meet you. My name is Maxie. Maximilian Calypse. Rifton gently guided her inside, saying, Introductions can wait. Let's go in. As the door swung open, Maxie looked around. The vast hall felt empty and cold, making her wonder if anyone had been taking care of the castle at all. But her thoughts were cut short as Rifton's voice took on a dangerous edge. What's going on here? He demanded, his expression dark. Turning to the steward, he growled, Didn't the messenger inform you to prepare the castle for my return? The steward explained, We laid carpets in the great hall, brought in new furnishings, oil paintings, and even expensive scented candles, my lord. That's not what I wanted, Rifton shouted. I sent back gold so the castle would look luxurious. What happened to all the money I sent? The steward sighed. We didn't want to spend so much without your approval, my lord. Rifton's outburst filled Maxie with fear, her breathing growing shallow as memories of her father's cruel words echoed in her mind. Useless girl. You are a disgrace to this family. Trembling, she gripped Rifton's cloak tightly, and in that moment, even the fierce Rifton went silent. Maxie, trembling, said softly, Rifton, I'd like to rest now. Before she knew it, there was a swoosh, and she found herself nestled in his arms. Rifton's voice softened. All right, I know you're exhausted. Without hesitation, he carried her through the line of servants, ignoring her embarrassed protests, and brought her to their shared bedroom. I hope this room suits you, he murmured gently. Maxie breathed a sigh of relief. This was the Rifton she knew. As she looked around, her eyes sparkled at the luxurious furnishings. Compared to her room at the Croy estate, this was incredibly lavish. But Rifton's expression remained troubled. You think it's shabby here, don't you? Those useless servants. They did their best, but this place is still nothing compared to your father's castle. Maxie tried to reassure him, but Rifton, full of self-doubt, continued, Compared to the Croy castle, this must look like a barn. His tone took on a rough edge, and Maxie flinched, feeling a wave of fear at his intensity. It's a wife's duty to look after the household, he said, voice softening. When the lord is away, it's the lady's responsibility to manage the castle. Rifton sighed, catching himself, and offered a quiet apology. He took a step toward her, his boots echoing on the floor in a way that reminded her of her father's intimidating footsteps. Reflexively, Maxie squeezed her eyes shut. Is he going to hit me? But instead, silence filled the room. Rifton gazed at her with a gentle smile. What I meant was, would you like to decorate this place however you like? I have plenty of gold, so feel free to buy whatever you want. Every woman loves beautiful things, right? You can hire tailors and craftsmen to help. You don't need to do much yourself. He looked at her with a questioning expression. Or, do you not want to? Maxie fell silent, unsure if someone as incompetent as her could handle such a task. Rifton didn't know about her past, how she had been treated at the Croy estate. But his next words filled her with happiness. Buy anything you want because this is your home now. Blushing, Maxie stammered, I'll make it a warm home for us. I'll decorate the castle. Rifton smiled in satisfaction, but suddenly, an awful stench filled the room. Covered in blood and grime from his recent battles with monsters, Rifton was clearly overdue for a bath. He sprang up, mumbling something about fetching the servants to prepare a bath, and left in a hurry, leaving Maxie alone to process everything. She couldn't help feeling a pang of sympathy for him, a man who had endured 3 grueling years on the battlefield, all for the sake of a wife who had little to offer except the title of a duke's daughter. If he ever learned the truth about her, he'd probably want to get rid of her. But another thought crossed her mind. No, I can't go back to the Croy estate. I have to prove that I'm useful. As she mused, Rifton returned, already stripped down. All set. Let's bathe, Maxie. Maxie blushed furiously, her eyes widening. WHY? Together? Rifton grinned mischievously. Come on, Maxie. It's normal for a husband and wife to bathe together. In the steam-filled bathroom, Maxie soaked in the warm bath, recalling his words. In all the castles I've visited, the lord and lady often bathe together. In the Northern Territories, there's even a custom where the lady of the castle bathes and serves any noble or knight who visits, Rifton added. Maxie shrank under the water, her cheeks red with embarrassment, but Rifton could see right through her discomfort. He reached over, gently touching her cheek to reassure her. Don't worry, there's nothing to be concerned about. Maxie sat there, frozen, her voice small and hesitant. Do I have to do that? To bathe guests? Rifton's face darkened with immediate fury. Absolutely not. If any bastard so much as suggests that, I'll drown him in the nearest river. Maxie lowered her head, her face falling. Oh no. I've made him angry again. Rifton scratched his head awkwardly. She's afraid again, he thought. He gently nudged her closer, saying, Stay still so I can wash your back. If you want, you can scrub my back too. He pressed a soft kiss to her neck and asked, Is the water too hot? Blushing, Maxie replied, And no, it's fine. She sank into the warm water, feeling at ease. The bath was incredibly relaxing. Maxie, are you all right? Rifton's voice echoed gently. Don't tell me you've fallen asleep already. She didn't respond, as she had drifted off without realizing it. The next morning at Anatol Castle, Maxie finally awoke, snuggled in a warm blanket and tempted to sleep in. But the sound of someone knocking startled her. My lady, are you awake? Came a soft voice from outside. It was a maid. My name is Rudy's, and I'll be your personal maid from now on. Lord Rifton has been at the training grounds since early morning. When did Rifton leave? Maxie wondered, still feeling nervous about meeting new people. Rudy's gently offered. Shall I do your hair now, my lady? Oh, yes. Maxie agreed, allowing Rudy's to work. The maid's touch was gentle, a stark contrast to her old nursemaid, whose rough hands often left Maxie's hair shedding onto the floor. When Rudy's was done, Maxie looked transformed. She wore a golden gown, her hair neatly styled. She found herself wondering, will Rifton like how I look? Turning to Rudy's, she asked, Do you have any favorite or least favorite foods? Rudy simply looked at her, a bit taken aback, and let out a small "oh," as if surprised by the question. Did I say something strange? Maxie's cheeks flushed, worried she had made another mistake. Her father's harsh words echoed in her mind. You useless, stuttering disgrace. She fumbled out, and no, never mind, and quickly excused herself, feeling humiliated. Just because Rifton is kind to me doesn't change anything. I'm still just a stuttering fool. Clutching her skirt, she thought anxiously, what if he laughs at me? Lady Maxie, Rudy's called, bowing slightly. Allow me to escort you to the dining hall. Following the maid, Maxie thought to herself, if the lady of the house is an idiot, the servants won't respect her. They'll ignore her just like everyone did back at the Croy estate. If Rifton learns how useless I am. She shook her head, realizing suddenly, no, this isn't the Croy estate. This is Anatol. In the dining hall, the steward Rodrigo greeted her respectfully. Did you sleep well last night, my lady? Maxie nodded. Why yes. I slept very well. Rodrigo responded politely. I didn't formally introduce myself yesterday, as I didn't want to cause you any trouble. My name is Rodrigo, and I manage the household staff here. Maxie stammered. It's a pleasure to meet you, Rodrigo added. I will do my best to serve you well. If there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to let me know. Maxie held her skirt tightly, thinking she needed to act like a proper lady of the house. Summoning her courage, she said, why yesterday, Lord Rifton told me that I could redecorate the castle if I wanted. A bead of sweat ran down her cheek. She tried to stay calm, but her voice was shakier than usual. Rodrigo replied cheerfully, indeed, my lady. Lord Rifton informed me this morning. We can summon merchants to the castle whenever you're ready. In the meantime, would you like a tour of the castle? Maxie felt a wave of relief. Thank goodness. They don't seem to be bad people. She brightened and replied, yes, please. Show me around. Rodrigo guided her through the castle, explaining its history. Calyp's castle was built 150 years ago by Sir Anatol, a knight of the fallen Doam Empire. After the empire's collapse, many monsters began appearing in this region, and it was removed from the Seven Kingdoms jurisdiction. 10 years ago, Lord Rifton, then only 18, was knighted and granted this land as his domain. He not only restored the castle but also built surrounding walls to protect the territory. Rodrigo's voice brimmed with pride as he shared the history of Anatol and Lord Rifton's accomplishments. Maxie could sense his loyalty, something she'd never seen from her own father's servants, who were bound only by fear. Seeing how respected Rifton was, she felt a newfound admiration for him as her husband. Eventually, Rodrigo, looking slightly tired, asked, would you like some tea, my lady? Yes, I would like that very much, Maxie replied. Rodrigo's face brightened. I'll have the servants prepare some for you. This tea is made from premium leaves. It's a pity Lord Rifton and the knights aren't fond of tea themselves. Maxie stifled a laugh. Of course, tea isn't exactly suited for him. Rodrigo smiled. Shall we head to the next room then? Maxie nodded in agreement. A moment later, her face fell. Is this? She looked around at the dim, crumbling room. Rodrigo scratched his head and admitted, since there's never been a formal ball here, this room hasn't seen much use. Maxie felt even more determined to transform this space into something entirely different. As they toured other rooms, it was clear that many areas would need extensive renovations. Rodrigo then led her to a withered tree, and Maxie's expression turned even more grim. Is this a garden? She asked. Rodrigo broke into a nervous sweat, explaining, yes, it's the reception hall, my lady. Haha. Maxie asked, Do we have a gardener? Rodrigo replied, we have staff assigned to maintain the grounds, but no dedicated gardener. With a sigh, Maxie said, then, please, take me to the outbuildings. Certainly, my lady. This way, Rodrigo responded. He led her to an outbuilding that used to house the late Lord Anatol's family, but had since been repurposed as a barracks for trainee knights. Beneath the midday sun, soldiers were diligently practicing swordsmanship in the courtyard. Oh, it's training time, Rodrigo remarked. But then he gasped, saying, we should go back, my lady. Lord Rifton dislikes having spectators during training. Understanding, Maxie nodded. All right, then let's go back. As they turned away, Rifton continued his rigorous training session with the soldiers, his commanding voice ringing out. Don't think you're getting any rest just because the expedition's over. Complete today's targets, or else. The soldiers shouted in unison. Yes, sir. 3 of Rifton's knights sighed, exchanging weary glances. What happened to him last night? One murmured. The day's barely started, and he's already pushing us to our limits. Did someone upset him? Just then, Rifton caught sight of Maxie nearby. She looked absolutely beautiful, and his heart softened. The 3 knights noticed her as well, but suddenly, Rifton seemed to radiate a softer aura, as if flowers were blooming around him. The knights, horrified, whispered, "What? What's happening here? I'd rather face monsters than deal with this." Blushing, Rifton quickly turned to look at Maxie again, only to see that she was already walking away. Acting on instinct, he immediately started after her. "Commander, where are you going?" One of the knights called, confused. Rifton paid no attention, his gaze fixed on Maxie's retreating figure. He reached out, gently taking hold of her arm. Maxie jumped, turning to face him. "Why did you leave without saying anything?" Rifton asked softly. I was touring the castle with the steward," she replied, a bit startled. "I didn't want to bother you." Surprised, she noticed how quickly Rifton had come up to her despite starting from the training grounds below. "You're not bothering anyone," he assured her. The knights overheard this and rolled their eyes in exasperation, thinking, actually, you're both causing quite the distraction. Rifton raised his voice. "Everyone, take a break for an hour. Meet back at the barracks afterward." The soldiers snapped to attention and saluted. "Yes, sir." Taking her hand, Rifton said, "Let me show you around." Walking hand in hand around the castle grounds, they both felt a shy warmth. Maxie glanced at his large hand enveloping hers, feeling flustered as memories of the previous day returned, making her cheeks burn. Rifton noticed and asked, "Is something wrong?" Looking down, Maxie mumbled, I'm sorry. Yesterday, I must have been a burden to you." Confused, Rifton replied, "A burden? Why would you think that?" Though his expression was slightly troubled, he offered her a reassuring smile. "There's no need to apologize. You were exhausted from the journey. But, you were tired too," Maxie stammered. You did the most work." Rifton cleared his throat. "Instead of being tired, I feel more energized." Maxie blinked in surprise. What did you say?" Her face turned bright red as Rifton, embarrassed, turned away. "Nothing. Let's keep going." At one of the castle towers, Rifton showed her the expansive view surrounding the castle. "With these fortified walls, no enemy could ever break through," he said proudly. Maxie noticed something in the distance and pointed. "What's that over there?" "That's Ruth's tower," Rifton replied. "It's close to the mountain, so it's convenient for long-range magical attacks. But don't go near it. Ruth has set up a lot of magical circles, and you might run into trouble." Maxie's eyes sparkled with interest. "A lot of magical circles? Really?" Seeing her excitement, Rifton felt a twinge of jealousy, his expression darkening. "There's no need for you to be interested in that," he muttered. "Oh, of course," Maxie responded quietly, a bit crestfallen. Seeing her disappointment, Rifton silently berated himself. "Am I boring you? I'm not very skilled with women, you know." Maxie shook her head quickly. "And no, you're not boring at all." But internally, she doubted herself. He's probably just being polite. "Surely he finds me annoying," she thought, clutching the edge of her dress. She recalled the first time they met at the Croy estate, where she, like the other girls, had been in awe of him. Surely he was very experienced with women. Seeing her nervous, Rifton stepped closer and asked, "What's wrong?" "Oh, it's just a little cold," she said, trying to hide her discomfort. Rifton pulled her close, murmuring, "You should wear thicker dresses. Anatol is colder than your home." Maxie's heart pounded at his gentle gesture, but she shyly pushed him away. I'm fine. The wind's not too strong, and the sun is still warm." Rifton paused for a moment, his gaze lingering on her. "Do you like this dress?" he asked. "Yes, I do," she replied, flustered, almost admitting she had never worn anything so beautiful before. Rifton's voice softened. "Soon, a tailor will visit the castle. You can have as many dresses as you want. I'll buy you anything you desire. Maxie bit her lip, thinking, this doesn't seem like the behavior of a man who doesn't know how to treat a woman. He's the most charming man I've ever met. She looked away, her face red. Is this how you always are? You keep telling me you'll buy me anything I want. Rifton frowned slightly. I'm not just saying that. I told you before that I'd make sure you could live in luxury here, just like back home. Maxie's heart ached at his words. She avoided his gaze, asking softly, Can we go back and rest now? Are you tired? Yes, she replied. Rifton gently took her hand, and Maxie hesitated before letting him lead her. Maybe I can stay here a bit longer, she thought. He said this is my home now. The storm is waiting ahead, can they overcome it together? Remember to like and subscribe to the channel to follow the series Under the Oak Tree.